These are hard times for Boston renters. There are lots of people looking for a place to live, but not enough units. That's why the city has the third most expensive rental fees in the United States. A report published by Northeastern University in 2015 characterizes the situation as a full-blown housing crisis. The report warns that working-class and immigrant families are at high risk of homelessness because they just can't compete in the current real estate market, which favors students and young professionals, many of whom can afford to pay the high rents. Meanwhile, immigrants living in housing in neighborhoods like East Boston face substandard conditions that threaten their very health. I met Alma Castrejon and Obdulio Angulo in their apartment, a small unit of 2 bedrooms located in Princeton Street, East Boston. As many other Latino families, they are facing eviction, but they want to remain, even though they have had terrifying experiences in that building. One night, they told me, their son woke up screaming loudly.
Empezó a llorar el niño.
Como loco se puso.
Yo lo agarré y decía que le dolía mucho aquí.
He was like crazy. I carried him and I saw that he was pointing to his head. They didn't know what was happening and they rushed him to the hospital. He was fine, but the doctor removed a cockroach the size of an adult thumb from his ear canal.
Pero era grande, las arañas las enseñaron.
It was huge. They showed it to us, says Obdulio, holding up 2 fingers with a 1-inch gap between them. Castrejon and Angulo are a Mexican couple that came to East Boston in 2006. East Boston is a neighborhood of around 40,000 people. For much of the 20th century, it was an Italian neighborhood. Like other parts of Boston, it went into economic decline in the 1970s and 1980s. Rents dropped, drawing a mix of immigrants from Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, that now comprise more than half of East Bostonians. For the past 20 years, the district remained one of the poorest in the city, but all the while a complex and vibrant community featuring bodegas selling arepas con queso right next to cafes where all Italian men still gather to gossip. So every time the neighborhood loses an Alma Castrejon or Obdulio Angulo, it suffers another tear in the fabric of this community. Castrejon and Angulo will not go quietly though. The cockroach in their son's ear called the attention of the doctors, who sent an inspector to the apartment that the family had been renting for 2 years. The inspector found bedbugs in the room, cockroaches behind the TV, a big hole under the sink, a hole that rats used to get into the apartment, and he also found no smoke detector. After the inspection, the landlord was obligated to fix the problems.
El señor vino cuando quiso.
The landlord came when he wanted, around 1 month later, and fixed some problems. But after that, he began telling Alma that he was going to raise us the rent because he had spent too much money on us. He said he had spent $2,500 because of the inspection, so he claimed us that money. 1 month after the discussion with the landlord, Castrejon and Angulo found 2 letters on the door when they got home. They were being evicted and had 30 days to find a new place. An average of 650 eviction cases are filed on Boston Housing Court each month. A majority of those cases come from historically low-income neighborhoods as Dorchester, Roxbury, or East Boston, who are being rapidly gentrified. In November of 2015, Alma's and Angulo's landlord, a Russian immigrant who doesn't speak Spanish, went to the apartment and wrote down on a paper what he wanted them to pay.
1,400 me dijo. Le digo, no, le digo, es mucho dinero.
He wanted to charge us $1,400, he said. I told him that it was too much money, that I don't work, that my husband doesn't earn that much, but he didn't sympathize with me. If you don't want to pay this, then get out of here, he said. If you can't pay, I will rent it to another tenant who can. The landlord's name is Michael Turetsky, a Russian immigrant who arrived to the US 20 years ago and who owns other properties in East Boston. He disputes. He says that 90% of his tenants are Latinos and that this is not a case of discrimination. He says that he filed a case in court against the Mexican couple because they didn't leave the apartment when he asked them to do it. He He says that he is not evicting them to rent it to more wealthy tenants, but because he wants the unit for his own son and his girlfriend. But not everyone finds Turetsky's story persuasive.
That's an excuse we see a lot, that landlords either say that they themselves would like to live in the apartment or that their family members or friends would like to live in the apartment.
That's Hannah Rosenthal, a student attorney with the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, who represents the Mexican couple in their case. When they received the eviction notice in December of 2015, Alma and Obdulio went to City Life Vida Urbana, a nonprofit that is helping tenants who are facing evictions in the neighborhood. City Life has a partnership with Harvard Law School and Greater Boston Legal Services, and they provide tenants with free legal assistance during their eviction process. This is not the first time that Hannah Rosenthal represents tenants in a similar situation.
This case is definitely part of a bigger trend in East Boston of the displacement of families, especially lower income families, immigrant families. And it's really common, especially in East Boston, for landlords to be evicting their tenants after trying to increase the rent so that they can fix up the apartment, make it a little better, and sell it at a much higher rent.
Even though rent controls policies were eliminated in Massachusetts in 1994, and there is no legal protection for tenants who are being evicted by landlords, Ms. Rosenthal is optimistic with this case.
In Massachusetts, it is legal to evict a tenant without a cause, but what's not legal is evicting a tenant in retaliation for their exercising their lawful rights. So in this case, we believe the landlord is attempting to evict the tenants because they called inspectional services, which is in their rights to do, and because they went to a tenant organizing meeting to learn more about their lawful rights.
The process in the court is just starting, and Castrejon's and Angulo's case is just one more of the 1,300 eviction cases filed in Boston Housing Court during the first 2 months of 2016, a similar number compared with the same amount of time last year. The landlord, Mr. Turetsky, told me that he is willing to negotiate. I understand that it is hard to find an apartment in Boston. I don't mind if they stay for a couple of months more while they find another place to live, but I need my apartment, he said. However, finding another apartment is not in the plans of Alma and Obdulio.
Lo que nosotros queremos que él no haga con nosotros eso ni con nadie.
We don't want that this landlord do to other people what he is doing to us. These landlords think that they can do whatever they want because they have money and we don't. But if he wants to negotiate, we will let him know that we want to keep paying what we agreed initially and that we want to live in a clean house.